Hello everybody, we are going to do a quick block which I think you'll agree is very simple but very effective, and several of these across a quilt would look amazing. So what you'll need are 4 6¼ inch squares in total. So I've picked 2 cream and 2 red. Now you could have 4 completely different ones, it's entirely up to you. And the contrast fabric is a 5 1/4 inch square cut in half on the diagonal, and that will yield 4 triangles. Okay, so let's get started straight away. So I'm going to bring you across to the sewing machine, and the first thing we're going to do is I am going to sew a red and a cream together. So I'm going to put 1 red and 1 cream right sides together, and we're going to sew using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm using a 1/4 inch foot. It doesn't have the guide on my foot, but it's my preferred foot. So the 1/4 inch foot is there, and we'll pop that down, and I'm going to chain piece these 2 squares. So what that means is I will sew these first 2, and then I won't break the thread. I will just carry on and put the next 2 right sides together. Oops. Right sides together like that again, and sew down one of the sides. If you were making several of these blocks, of course you could do all of this piecing at this one time. So once you've done that, just separate those 2. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to press both of the blocks to the dark side. So in my case it's the red side. Going to get these right, so I'll pop you across to the pressing mat. I'm using a wool pressing mat. All of the things that you see me using are on the Sixpenny Memories website, which is www.six-penny.com. So I'll just open that up there like that, set the seam, and do exactly the same with this one. So set the seam like that and press towards the dark side. In my case that's the red. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay them so that the cream is on top of the red and the red is on top of the cream. It's entirely up to you how you do this, and pop them right sides together again, and just grab a pin, because you'll find that the center of the seam will lock together beautifully, or it should. So just get it so you can feel them lock together. Pop a pin in, that's it, just to keep them together. And then we're going to take it back to the sewing machine, and this time we're going to sew down this long edge here. So I'm going to swizzle you around and take you around to here, take you back to the sewing machine, all the way around. Let's move the iron off the sewing machine like that, and sew this long length. Okay. And again, it's just a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And once again, if you are making several of these blocks, then you could chain piece again. Now I don't mind sewing over the pins. The pins are quite fine, they're long and fine, and I just find that it saves the work moving. I know the jury's out with regards to pins and sewing over them, but I don't seem to have a problem. So now what I've created is a very simple 4-patch block, and this time I'm going to bring you back to the ironing board, and we are going to press this seam. So again, set the seam. Let's bring it down a bit further so you can see. Set the seam like that, and then open the seam up. And if you want to, you can put little marks, cuts into the seam, so that we'll get a nice twirl on the inside. I'm just for quickness just getting it done. So there it is, all pressed beautifully. Now you need to get your triangles that you cut before. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to finger press the triangle like that, and pop it. The crease that you've just put in, don't iron the crease in. You're just going to pop that onto the center seam. So the crease of your triangle is on that center seam, and you want to be careful that you're not stretching this triangle, that you just treat it with some care, because remember that this edge is the bias edge. Then we're going to flip it round again. Just move down again a bit further. We're going to take another triangle, and yes, the triangles don't go to the end of the block, that's absolutely fine. And we're going to pop that crease onto that seam and pin it in place. Oops, get some of my pins out here. And I'm pinning these all in place at the moment because then it'll just make it quicker for sewing. So that's that one. So we've got 2 on now. Twizzle it round, get your next triangle, finger press it, like that, pop it onto the seam. The other way of telling is that your point of your triangle is on the seam as well. And then grab a pin and pin it in place so it isn't going to move. I'm putting 3 pins in because I'm moving the block around obviously when I'm putting the next triangle. And then you've got your last triangle. And this would make a really lovely scrappy quilt. I mean, I've done these in similar colours out of the same range, but it would look quite stunning just in your 3 colours. Black and white would look really nice as well. So I've popped those pins in. Oops, a daisy, she says. I'm just going to move that across because I just want to make sure that that triangle is in the centre of that seam. Everything's going to be trimmed down, but it's best if you can get that one into the centre of the seam to start with. Okay, so now we've got all of the 4 triangles on. We're going to take them back to this sewing machine and we're going to sew just where the triangles are. So I'll twizzle you around again. Okay, so just move you up a little bit. So this feels a little bit odd because normally you sew from one end of the block to the other and you're not. You don't, you know, I'm not doing any reinforcing stitches at this moment in time. I'm quite happy. I've started just a little bit before the triangle, and I'll take the stitching right the way to the very end of the triangle and then cut the thread. And then because I've pinned them all in place, I can just swizzle it round and do exactly the same again. Okay, that's 2. Cut the thread, swizzle it round, there's an escaping pin there, and do exactly the same again. And you're going to do the same with all 4. Now the next bits of equipment that you're going to need once we've sewn these on, ideally, is a 12.5-inch square. And you need your rotary cutter and you need a cutting mat. You could use a rotating cutting mat if you wanted to. It's entirely up to you. So I'm just going to get that last one on. And the beauty about this block, if you've got that 12.5-inch square, is that the finished size of the block is 12.5 inches. So we don't have to worry about any of the maths in regards to that. So I'm just removing all of those pins. And then we're going to take it back to the ironing board and we're going to carefully press. And I mean carefully press, because remember at this stage, these edges here could easily distort. So I'm just going to turn you back around and take you back down to this. This is a New Zealand wool pressing mat that I'm using, if anybody's interested. We do have them on the website. They are fabulous. I have tried several of these mats and I've been a bit disappointed with some. This one is a nice density, and also if you're using a steam iron, it doesn't smell. The first one I tried, I didn't actually bring in because whilst the price was really lovely, the smell wasn't, so I have actually ditched that one. But these ones we've done very well. We've got them in 2 sizes, 17 by 12 and 12 by 12. So can you see now the block's starting to come together? Now these blue edges are going to be the corners of my block. So I'm just going to remove the wool mat, and this is where your 12.5-inch square comes into its own. I'm going to get you right the way around to here. So half of a 12.5 inches is 6 1/4, and so what I'm doing is I'm lining up my block so that the 6 1/4 line is in the centre and the diagonal line is running through the diagonal line of my block and also into the corners of my triangle. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to trim up this side here. I'm right-handed, so this is the first side, and along this edge here. I'm just going to get rid of that iron because I don't need it anymore. That'll give me some more room. Whoa, get rid of the iron. Yeah, we don't want to be cutting the iron cable. So that's 6 1/4. You make sure that's in the centre. Okay, the diagonal line is running through the centre of my block, and I'm going to cut up that side there, and I'm going to cut across there. Now, in an ideal world, what you would do is you would rotate your mat rather than the fabric, but I haven't got enough space here, so I'm just going to twizzle it around. So I'm going to carefully turn that round. Now, these bottom corners here are perfect. Sorry, these bottom corners here are perfect, this one. So what I'm able to do now is I'm able to drop my 12.5 inch square on top of my block. The 6 1/4 has landed in the centre like that. Everything's on the diagonal line. You can see that's the 6 1/4, and I'm going to trim up this side and across the top. So I'm going to go up there, and I'm just going to go across there. Just got my tripod just a little bit too close, but never mind, we're getting there. All right, that's cut. If it hasn't cut through the first time, just cut it the second time. And there you are, you've got your block. How quick was that? It's a very, very straightforward, simple block. Now, if I grab the other one that I did earlier on, you can see when you put them together, you've got this, you're creating a new block here because you're creating these two triangles are meeting together, and ultimately they will create a square. So I think you'll find that it's a really useful block for scraps. It's ideal if you're wanting to use, you know, layer cake squares, orphan layer cake squares that you have. Hope you enjoy using it. Let me know how you get on. And thank you for watching Sixpenny Memories. And I'll see you very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.